Alrighty. Hello, everybody who might be watching this after the fact. This is session 2 of the Alchemists campaign, set in my homebrew world of Dystopia. And we're just going to get right into it. So, just behind you is the ruins of the old world, that dangerous and desolate place you have just crawled out of, thanks to some timely assistance from the mysterious Doctor of Edinburgh. After having told you of your strange origins within the city, the shadow creatures who survived being purged from the fire, telling you a little bit more about this strange world that you are just barely coming to know despite your age. Those ruins now lay behind you. The doctor has turned back, disappeared into the ruins that he had just led you out of. And ahead of you, across a barren field dotted with dying grass, withered trees, on the horizon, you can see a small handful of wooden buildings. The doctor has told you that this is a town that you should be safe to visit and get a rest after your long journey out of the old ruins of the city. And as you guys look out onto this town on the horizon, what would you guys be doing after the doctor has now turned around and left you guys to your own devices?
There are some buildings up ahead. Let's find some respite for the night.
Ikram would just give a kind of grunt of acknowledgement. As they're walking, he has a small sewing needle and some loose thread, and he's going through his wounds and stitching them back together. Just tightening, and he kind of bites the thread loose, or bites the thread and ties it up, and goes onto another wound and knits it together.
Tallo's looking over and sort of busying himself, it seems, with something on his shoulder. And anyone nearby enough would see that he's got his little pet mouse on his shoulder and he's pulling out scraps of stale bread or roots and just little, not very palatable bits of food from his pockets that he's got stuffed in there, and he's sort of sharing them with his pet mouse on his shoulder as he sort of follows behind the group.
I'm sure this goes without saying, but we shouldn't mention anything about what happened.
Mention it to who?
Who knows who's in there? They might not be so friendly if they find out that we were all horrible monsters a few hours ago.
I agree with the hothead. We need to lay low.
And with the base plan decided, the four of you venture across the barren fields. There is an eerie silence that hangs over. No sounds of life other than the footsteps and breathing of your companions and yourself. And you continue on in that way. For probably about half an hour to an hour or so. You can see the sky dimming into twilight as night begins to approach. But before night falls completely, though not much before, you see those handfuls, dots of wooden buildings getting closer and closer until the town, if you can call it a town, it's
Rip.
Jeff.
so I think I froze there for a second. You guys hear me?
Yeah. Yeah, we can. You're saying so we see the town, if we could call it that, and
Yeah. Yes, you can. Shack, like a collection of shacks, would be more an apt description than a town. There's just a small couple of them, but you can see that well, most people have kind of begun to looks like finish up the day with dusk approaching. One of the shacks is what looks like an older woman just sitting in a chair out on the front area, just outside the door. And she doesn't say anything as you approach. She just kind of eye you guys warily.
Hello, ma'am. I was wondering, do you have room for some weary travelers to stay tonight?
Travelers, what is it that brings you to this place? How do I know that I can trust you?
you probably shouldn't, but no one should trust anybody. We're just travelers passing through. We'll pay.
Eh, I guess you make a fair point. Yes, trust is hard to come by these days. More often comes by foolishly rather than anything else. Yes, if you don't mind the company of a woman such as myself, I guess I could make some room for the four of you.
Thank you very much.
I can't say the space will be cozy with so many of you. Not much furnishings to offer, but if you don't mind a floor, then you can at least find a little bit of safety for a night.
The floor will be plenty comfortable. Thanks for your hospitality.
Is there a market where we could get some food to cook for you tonight?
Oh, that won't be necessary. I'd be more than happy to prepare food for you. It's the least I can do for some guests. We don't see many of them often here.
Yes. What is this place called?
Whatever name this place once had is long gone. Not many people here to call it anything these days. Call it what you like. Anyways, that's not important right now. Please, come along inside.
Perfect. Yes, I'll go inside and make myself at home, I guess.
Yeah, Kira will go in and, just be offering to help the lady with anything she needs if she's going to be cooking.
Igrum would find like a wall or a corner of the floor and just like slump back against the wall, resting his body from just the sheer amount of exertion that, happened. It felt like moments before. He's just glad to be able to rest, so to speak.
Tallow follows in behind last, trudges inside, still rubbing his chest from the torch that was pressed against it by the doctor in that bizarre ritual. Takes in the surroundings and, like Igrum, tries to find a sort of corner or somewhere he can tuck himself into, as out of the way as possible. And for now, just sort of keeps to himself, singing and humming to himself and to his pet mouse as he settles in.
So Ignatius, realizing that he said that he would pay, remembers to himself that he doesn't even know like where he is or what the time scale is, and so he reaches into his pocket where he thinks that he has some coins, and he pulls a few out. What do they look like?
So most of the coins that you'd be used to using, they're just made out of iron. Little else. Iron is one of the more abundant metals available. One of the easier ones that they can still make things out of with good steel, and different, more complex mixtures being much more difficult to come by. So most of the coins would just be most likely fairly rusted, the straight iron coins.
No like insignias or like patterns on them?
Some might have very simple engravings, but the actual engravings would vary from town to town and even from person to person. Now, there's not a whole lot of strict establishment, so there's really, it's even using iron as currency is more of just like an understood thing than any sort of official decree. It's like everyone uses it because there's got to be something, but some people might not even deal with it.
As Tallow hears Ignatius jingling some coins in his hands, sort of peeks his ears in the other corner of the room, and he sort of looks over and says, "You're the one that offered to pay. It's not like I have any money."
You have nothing at all?
He hesitates and sort of glances down to his pouch, just shakes his head.
So Ignatius steps up and says, "Look, I'll pay. What do your coins look like?"
"Mine," he says.
Yeah, I'm trying to figure out, because and he kind of whispers, that guy said that a bunch of time passed and we don't know where the fuck we are. So if we have the same coins, that means that we're at the same place. And so he would pull a coin out and show that it has a symbol of a crescent moon on it.
Tallow kind of ticking over in his mind. He's thinking a million miles an hour. Maybe if he does have coins, maybe not willing to reveal them to these people he still doesn't really know. And so he turns to a trick that he's used countless times in his life, and reaches into his pocket, pulls out a closed fist, and opens his hand to show Ignatius, as if Tallow's expecting something to be in there, but his hand's empty, and he just is utterly shocked. And he sort of catches himself and says, "See, I have nothing."
Well, I guess that gets us one step closer to nowhere.
Igrum would kind of chime up at this point. He's been kind of watching this conversation go on, and he kind of fumbles for some coins at his pouch. He kind of speaks up gruffly. Tal and I, we knew each other. At least I knew him before this whole thing. And he kind of holds out the pouch. This was supposed to be for you, Tallow, but I guess I'll pitch in for the stay. And I would hand you a pouch of like 5 coins, or at least hold them up. And the coins themselves are very varied between each coin. There's some that are bigger, some of them have like more regular shape to them, some of them are circular, some of them are bent, and they look like they have been taken from a bunch of different places and just put in a pile. And he just hands you this assortment of various coins.
Thank you. Please hold on to it for me. I don't know if I can take that from you.
Well, seeing as I don't think we finished what we started to do, I don't think you deserve this yet. He kind of like snatches back the coin pouch, holds it up to Ignatius to add it to the pile of coins we're going to give this lady for this day.
Yeah, so Ignatius would take it from you and then just add it to his. So is this the part where we eat a bunch of poison food and die?
I was gonna say, I've seen some towns in my days, and this one, something about it just makes my hair stand on end. Something ain't right.
Kira is paying close attention to this old lady as she's, helping her cook and stuff.
So Kira's not in earshot necessarily of what the three of us are saying?
No, I wouldn't think so. She's very used to, just kind of going and doing household chores and tasks. So that's immediately what she would be comfortable going to.
Sorry about that, guys. Am I back?
Yep.
Yeah.
All good.
All right, I've been having some internet issues lately. So I'm on my phone right now. Hopefully that's better. At least better than nothing. Well, I don't know exactly when I cut out there, but basically you guys had just given Ignatius the money. And at that point, this woman that's let you guys into her home kind of turns away from the food that she's preparing and kind of the kitchen side of the room. So, tell me, what brings a ragtag group such as yourselves out from the old world? If you don't mind me asking.
Just bumped into each other. That's all. Nothing special.
We were out for a walk.
Out for a walk in the old world.
Oh, it's lovely this time of year. Tries a joke.
She just gives you guys a quizzical look. You're expecting me to believe that all four of you just happened to be out for a walk in the old world because it's nice this time of year?
Yeah.
Fair enough. It's not my place to ask questions, especially when you guys have the weapons and I don't. If you don't want to talk about it, then we won't talk about it.
I think some things are better left unsaid.
And when you say that, she looks at you, Igram, makes like direct eye contact with you, and holds it there for a good while, unless you were to break it first. She would just say, "Perhaps you're right. Maybe there are things that are best not spoken of." Her eyes don't move away from you, Igram, as she says that. And then she just turns back around to the food that she's preparing. Well, if you won't tell me where you were coming from, can you at least tell me where you're headed off to after this?
So Ignatius would kind of look around at everybody and, yeah, so where are we going?
Nearest settlement that's more than a handful of shacks. As lovely as your shack is, that food smells delicious.
No reason to sugarcoat it there. I know this place isn't much, but I'd like to think it's better than nothing, at the very least. It'll take a lot more than calling these shacks as they are to upset me.
Very well. A roof over your head in this world is a fine thing.
And so Ignatius would turn to this woman and ask her if there's anything of interest or like strange that's been going on around here lately. Any rumors maybe that she's heard about something? Just anything interesting, like news-wise?
Well, I can't say I get a lot of visitors here these days. The, an old friend of mine had some interesting news. Apparently, the creatures of the old world have been a little bit more, what's the right way to say it? Resilient in some ways than was previously thought.
Creatures of the old world? What What kind? Have they been wandering around here?
And her kind of calm smile just drops for a moment. Why don't you tell me? You were the guys that just wandered out of there.
We were in over our heads. We thought we could find treasure in there and were easily spooked. We do not know what lurks in there. We only heard terrible stories, and it was enough for us to run out.
She just stands there for a moment, soaking in what Kira's telling her. Or just kind of giving a shrug and a sigh. Oh, well, if you're dead set on not talking about it, then we won't talk about it. Anyways, food's ready. I'm sure you guys could use a nice meal.
What do you know?
It's kind of an odd question to ask out of context. What do I know
What
about
do you
what?
mean? What do you mean if we're not talking about it, then we won't talk about it?
Have you been in there?
Not for a while.
These creatures your friend was telling you about, they're acting differently. Are they coming out of the old world? Do they come around here?
They don't usually, but I guess tonight is a new night.
And Tallow kind of instinctively reaches his hand to the handle of his one remaining dagger and just sort of looks around, and perhaps for the first time properly actually sort of scanning the inside of this woman's shack, with everything that's been said and the way she's acting, sort of putting him back on edge a bit. I guess he's looking to see if there's anything weird. Even, his mind's racing with all the stories that he's heard. He's even looking for gruesome things, possibly expecting to see a barrel with blood overflowing from it or something in the corner. His mind racing away from him. Do you see anything strange at all?
The only thing strange that Tallow sees is that there's nothing strange to see.
Igrim would bolt upright, snatching that spear and pointing it at her, and just gonna threaten her, essentially. Come on, be straight with us. What do you know? Just threatening her at spear point. Just fed up with this, beating around the bush that she's doing.
Well, it's a little strange of you to make demands telling me to speak straight. You're the ones who refused to tell me where you're from, what you were doing, telling lies. Now you say that I'm not speaking straight.
You know what? Let's just.
Go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say, Ignatius would speak up and say, "You're right. We haven't been truthful. So I guess I'll just tell you everything that happened. I mean, it won't really matter much in the end anyway. I doubt that it'll make much sense to you even." And And he would kind of pause, waiting to see if she replies before he goes on.
What was it like to be one of them?
Shit. So,
Were you aware? Or did you just wake up? Like after a long sleep?
you describe it so well. I wouldn't say I was very rested though. But I don't remember a thing.
Still with spear point out, kind of relaxed a little bit, but he's still poised essentially. He'd kind of chime in saying, I can still sometimes see their faces. Without really elaborating further.
And she looks at you, Igram. And she turns away with your spear still pointed at her, turns back to the counter, gathers a couple plates in her hand, passes some of them to Kira, motions over to the table before grabbing another couple herself. There's some breads on there and meat of some sort. Looks like it may be chicken, but you're not entirely sure. Says, come on. Sure you guys could use a nice meal. We can talk more.
What did you say your name was?
My name is Myra.
Well, Myra, I'll sit with you and eat your offering. And perhaps we can all be straight with each other a bit more.
Igrim would glance at Talo with a concerned look.
So Ignatius would sit down also and say, well, if you already know, I wonder how much more you know about us. And kind of like peer at her.
Tallow catches Igram's glance and tries to give him just a little subtle gesture of, come on, sit down. Let's just see how this goes. Lower your spear, big fella.
Igrim would sit in the seat directly across from her to make sure that, she's always in line of sight. If she were to do anything, suspicious or sketchy, he'd be the first to see, essentially, or he wouldn't be able to miss it, essentially.
And as she passes out food to each of you, sorry, go ahead, Kira, if you had something.
Yeah, I was just gonna say Kira's kind of been operating on autopilot after Myra said, what was it, or after she asked what was it like being one of them. She's just kind of going over it over and over again in her head, and she's just what was happening, what's happening now, and kind of just robotically going through the motions, and she didn't realize how starving she was.
Yeah, and those of you that would eat the food, it tastes really good, actually. It's been a long time since you've had a good meal. And to have well-prepared food is kind of a luxury in most parts of the world these days. And as you eat, and as Ignatius, as you said, I wonder how much else you know about us. Just say, I only know how much he told me, which is not much. Rest assured that we're on your side.
Tallow, in the middle of stuffing a piece of the bread into his pocket for later, says, "Who's he?"
And then Ignatius would also follow that up with, "What side?"
We? Igrum would like also chime in.
Well, I believe you just bid him farewell not too long ago, before you got here.
You know the doctor?
Quite well. Known him for a long time.
With this tallow absently rubbing the burn on his chest from the torch, from the ritual, he sort of starts sort of looking over Myra to sort of see if he can see any similar burn marks perhaps on her. Assuming if they're there, they're probably covered by clothes, but he's having that thought now. Sounds like she's gone through something similar to what we have. Is there anything visible?
Go ahead and make me a perception roll.
Eight.
Yeah, so as you look over, just trying to see if there's any sign of any of that similar burn mark. You would see that you didn't really see anything, whether or not that it's covered up underneath different clothes or anything like that. It's hard to say. But you would see kind of underneath her outer coat. You can't quite see the full thing. You can see what looks like kind of in the open space color on her undershirt. Two lines that seem to come up in like a semicircle. That kind of falls under her outer coat. You can't see anything other than that. You're muted.
Sorry. So that looks like scars on her flesh, is it? Or
No, it's markings on like an undershirt.
right. Even still, I suppose Pele would just ask her directly about it. So what he told us we were and what we came back from. Have you been through the same? Were you lost as well?
No, I haven't. In fact, for a while, we didn't even know that it was possible to come back. You aren't the first that we've seen, but you aren't too far from it. It's a rare thing for people to come back.
So what happened with these others that you've seen?
Most of them I haven't seen since. It's a big world out there, I don't do much to keep in contact with those that visit unless they do the same. Knowing this place, they've probably gone off and died somewhere else. But
Why do you only save some of them?
we've tried to save plenty. But as I'm sure you saw by the ash that you woke up in, if I'm to understand the situation correctly, the majority of them don't make it. Most succumbed to shadow that meet with fire. A little more than ash in the wind. The survival rates are incredibly low.
And to think we were a breath away from the same fate.
We may be suffering a fate worse than theirs.
I don't know. I mean, I feel fine.
I know what you're saying. This food is pretty good. He'd say after, like, chewing kind of mouth openly with like this big like leg of chicken or whatever. Kind of just like wipes his mouth.
Perhaps our luck is turning, hey? Says to Igram with a smile.
Certainly had his ups and downs. Not sure I'd count my chickens yet, but yeah, I guess you could say that.
I'm just saying, maybe this is a fresh start. Talos sort of starts getting a bit more animated. All of us, we came back from this perhaps for a reason, or maybe just because we were all strong enough to do so. But
Or maybe you just got lucky.
Ingram would kind of like stop eating and stop chewing when you said a new start. Kind of like as if that kind of struck a chord with him, but not in a good way, more like a a melancholy kind of way, if that makes sense.
So Ignatius would look at Myra and then ask if she knows anywhere they can find maps of the area to try and figure out where they are in the world. He explains that like we have no idea how long we've been like changed, and we also don't know how far we've gone from where we were.
And there hasn't really been a whole lot of people willing to go out and map these lands these days. However, if you have somewhere that you'd like to suggest, I can point you in the right direction.
Tallow stands up abruptly from the table and rushes over to his pack in the corner that he settled down in. Rummages around in there, pulls out a bit of crumpled paper and comes back, unfolds it and places it in front of her, and it's a scribbled map of a town. I guess there's not really cities, are there? From his hometown, basically. I don't know if I know it's just a map. Does this look familiar to you?
Kind of leans down, studying the map for a moment with a furrowed brow. I've seen a similar place. Hard to say just from this drawing if it's the same place. If you follow the edge of the of the old world for about a week. I believe that should get you in the right area. Been a while since I've been up that direction, so it's hard to say for sure, but as my memory serves me, it's probably the direction.
He snatches up the map with a smile and says with a big smile to Ignatius, well, in a week, perhaps you'll have your answer.
Or at least an answer for you, but that's at least a step closer.
And he just tucks it back into his shirt and tucks back into his food, stuffing another bit of bread into his pocket for later.
I feel like Ingram would be kind of studying Tallow as he started to chime about where they wanted to go, and he kind of gives this look of very like unsatisfied with your answer, Tallow. But he just continues chewing, eating this food slower and quieter than he was was before. He's definitely.
I think Taylor would pick up on Igram's on that and start sort of remembering the sort of deal that that Taylor and Igram had before all of this happened, and the fact that Igram's now trying to find his family, and that's part of what we're all trying to figure out here. And it's as if Taylor had just forgotten that completely, and it sort of comes back to his mind, and he doesn't quite know what to say, I suppose. With this realization, he just sort of quietens back down into himself a bit. That animation that he was having and that sort of excitement simmering down a bit as he stews on that and empathizes internally with what Igram's going through here.
And so now that it's like gone through two members of the group, Ignatius would kind of like see this, and he would look to each of them and say like, what's going on? We're trying not to have secrets here, but you two are acting pretty shady.
As I said.
Yes,
some
I
things
agree.
are
I
better
do
left
not like
unsaid.
that.
I mean, maybe it's something that I could help you with, huh? We're kind of in this together.
Chewing slowly, Taylor kind of looks over to Igram as if to sort of gesture. Well, shall we say? Or do you want to say? Glancing back to Ignatius. And just sort of leaves it lingering there to see if, over to Igram to see if he wants to say it or not.
Ikram kind of just like, with like, the cow, mouth movements, just like these big chews, just this like deadpan stare, and then he kind of swallows, just drawing this out as long as he can. Then he just says, "I don't Tallow. I think that you should be the one to tell them because you know more than I do. That's why I came and sought you out."
Igram has a problem. Before all of this happened. All right, Ignatius. You say you might be able to help. And he kind of quick side glance to Myra, not knowing whether she might have knowledge that could help here, or if this is going to put him in some hot water with her or not. But what do you know of demons?
Not a whole lot. The order I was a part of kind of frowned upon looking into that knowledge. I've read a couple books on it, but that's all.
Well, see, might not be able to read all of the books of lore in the world, but I've heard a lot of stories and collected a lot of tales and information. And the very little that I've learned about demons, it's not something that I would have really otherwise wanted to get messed up in. No offense, Igram. But Igram came to me for help, and it's something that we're trying to figure out.
I came to you and I had the coin. Hard to pass it up.
And I think Taylor would now kind of look over to Myra to see how she's been reacting to this speak of demons and everything.
Yeah, Myra would just look over towards Ignatius and just say, the only thing that you need to know about demons, they offer you whatever it is that you desire. But many things in return. Deadly things. Fool would accept their offer. It is never worth the price.
Again, we kind of give her a glare when she says the word fool.
I agree. I do not want to mess around with these demons.
I've heard tales of some of these deals bringing the dead back to life. Not in the way that we were. I don't know. I don't think we were dead the same way. And it's not something I want to be messing around with.
Igrim would speak up. Yeah, you three, you've died, what, once? And come back? For me, that's, he starts counting on his finger, 17 times.
You've what?
Oh my God.
He heard me. He kind of like, starts gesturing at all these like wounds on his arms and his chest and near his neck and stuff. 17. Some of them by accident, some by the blade of another, and some by my own blade.
And the doctors brought you back all this time?
He just chuckles. No. There's no doctor that did this to me. It was except for that last time, this most recent time. He kind of just starts, trailing off, being a little confused how he can say it properly. Then he kind of just, picks up another piece of food and starts chewing on it as a kind of a subtle gesture that he doesn't really want to talk about anymore.
I had no idea it was quite like that. And he looks Igram right in the eye. I made you a promise that I'll try and help however I can. We'll get some answers. And he kind of hesitates. not knowing this is a hot topic, and we'll find your family.
How is Myra reacting to this kind of back and forth between Igram and the rest of the party?
She has this like almost amused on her face, as if this is more intriguing and entertainment than it is shocking and strange. You would get kind of the eerie sensation of somebody knowing what you were talking about without ever having a way to know what you're talking about. Like she's just listening and nodding her head, almost like a story you've told to your grandmother 1,000 times, and she's just like, "Yep, yeah, okay, yeah, that's cool." Just like that friendly smile, but like not totally involved. That's basically just what she's been doing, just kind of nodding along with the conversation as you guys have been talking to each other.
Igram would stand abruptly from his chair, kind of after, eating some food. Kind of turns around, leaving the table behind. Takes a few steps, stops, looks back, and just says, "Going out for a walk." And he'd go outside and probably pace around for a bit, just to let his mind settle.
And Myra would just kind of nod expectantly to Igram as he left. Probably wouldn't even see it as he's walking the other direction. She would just turn to the rest of you and say, "You guys have had a long day. Perhaps it might be time for you to get some rest. Your friend will be okay. He just needs a moment."
Unlike Tallow, not to finish a bowl of food, considering especially one as delicious as this, so hard to come by. But with a few spoonfuls left, he sort of pushes it away after everything he's just learned. Thank you, Myra, for the meal. I think I'll take some time as well. And sort of nods and leaves the table and goes over to his corner.
And how about Ignatius and Kira?
Yeah, so Ignatius just finishes, heads over to Tallow, and kind of tries to ask just him as he says, "So what? Are we going to your town, or are we fighting demons, or what's the plan here?"
Fighting demons. Heard too many stories, I think. Yeah. You really are a hothead, aren't you?
I understand you're afraid, okay, but I can handle anything that gets thrown at me, all right?
Oh, yeah, I saw. Back there in the cathedral. Thanks for saving Kira.
Hey,
Thanks for
I tried to help.
back.
I told you guys to run, and as I was going to try and lure him out, and then that Dr. Shady just came in and blinded us all right? You couldn't trust that. It worked out this time, but what about next time?
And I can trust you, can I? He's like kind of quivering with rage a bit now, and he sort of stands up.
Ignatius is like, at least I'm straight up.
How tall is Ignatius?
Like 5'10", 5'11".
Okay, so a little bit taller than Tallow. Yeah, so he's looking slightly up into his face, and yeah. Look, I woke up, we all woke up, none of us knew where the hell we were, how the hell we got there, or what the hell to do next. The only way we got out of there is thanks to the doctor, and I don't remember you being a help as we were escaping. That's all I remember.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry. I just won't fight any horrible shadow beasts to try and defend you. I won't try and lure any giant monsters away from you. I won't try and create any openings for you to get out. You got it all on yourself. We'll just count on Dr. Shootabop coming in next time to save us all. And then we'll count on another doctor the next time. And then he would kind of poke you in the chest and say, sometimes you got to count on yourself, mate.
And he pokes him right in the burn from the torch. And Tallo's visibly kind of like trying not to wince. And he just takes a deep breath, still sort of like fists clenched down by his side, just kind of quivering with rage.
And then he would add, even your girlfriend over there is going to have to learn to take care of herself, bud.
Oh, and you've got through this life so far without any help from anyone, have you?
And he would ignite his hands in flame and just kind of like hold them up like, here I am, here I stand.
Tallow would visibly
Stop it, both of you!
step back and glance
What are
over
you
it.
doing?
She
You're
says
going
that.
to burn this house down.
And you quelch the flames. Not yet, not now at least. I have no reason to.
Myra was talking about sides. Tallow sort of says as he's still heaving breath. And he's looking Ignatius right in the eye again. A little bit, quite visibly afraid, I suppose, for lack of a better word. Like, Ignatius is a real imposing, scary, flame-wielding dude, you know? So, but he still sort of stands his ground and says, just think carefully about whose side you're on.
Things aren't so black and white. A circle has no sides.
If you want to go fighting demons, be my guest. Or I want to help Egram try and find his family. I want to try and see if I can find my brothers. You might not have anything in this world that you care about except for power and yourself. And he sort of swallows his pride a bit here and says, we all came through this together, whether we like it or not.
Do you think that the doctor brought us back so that you could go on living your lives as usual? No. The doctor has a purpose for us. And you cannot go back to your brothers. You cannot continue being a hothead. I think we need to listen to what Myra has to say and see where we can go to find more about these alchemists.
A purpose. He was going to kill us. We're only here because we were strong enough to survive the flames. There's nothing out there except for what we make. And so far we've decided to stick together, and that's what we'll do. So tomorrow we'll get up, it'll be a new day, and we'll see what's out there. Taking this one step at a time. There's no purpose. There's no reason, though. We're just doing as we please. And so with that, I guess Ignatius would just walk away and find a place to lay down.
Yeah, Kira will kind of grumble and start cleaning up.
Taylor would kind of pace around a bit, I think, watching Ignatius leave. And yeah, just holding his tongue from there. And I think he would actually bite the bullet and maybe go step outside as well. As well as to get away from this, get some fresh air himself, and check on it, Igram as well.
Yeah, you'd see Igram in the moonlight. He's kind of leaning one leg, kind of just leaning with his back up to like the withered bark of a petrified tree, and he's kind of just standing there. You see his hand kind of like idly rubbing his neck. He's thinking of a life he used to have. That warm meal really brought back some memories, a flashback to him, where he'd be sitting at a table similar to that where he was sitting. Across from him, his wife and his daughter, a few years in age. And he's just rubbing his neck where there is this just thickly sewn together gash mark across near the base of his neck. He'd notice you, Tallow, as you'd leave the little shack. He'd kind of give you a acknowledging glance, but he'd stay quiet.
Yeah, I think Tallow would take that as leave Igram with some space for now, and but maybe come up, like, do that thing where he's sort of close enough that it's obvious he's wanting Igram to talk to him when he's ready, kind of thing, but sort of facing the other way, and just starts sort of singing softly. Story of a man and his family, a man who has to go off to war, and during all the fights and all the battles, he's always thinking of his family, and the song ends with the man coming home.
I think that Igram would recognize the song and kind of chuckle. He'd say, "I wish that I was a soldier instead of what I am." He kind of pauses. I was. No, I still am. As he kind of feels for the hilt of his sword. A sword that's seen many deaths, essentially. He'd look at you, Tallow, and kind of say, "So you really don't know anything, do you?"
Tallow sort of looking up at the moon and the stars. I do. But about demons, I misled you. The money, the iron that you were offering is more than I've ever seen. And I knew that we could find something together, surely, some answers. So no, I don't deserve that iron. Not yet. But I promised you. And he looks down and looks over towards him, not necessarily making eye contact. I promise you that. We'll find some answers. He looks back up at the moon and leans back against the tree. What's it like, Igram? Coming back like you do. That many times. What's on the other side?
I don't know, kind of stories you like to tell and listen to. But I haven't seen the other side. It's just like waking up after a long night of drink. It's just nothingness. And at first, it hurt. It hurt like hell. Now I don't even feel it anymore. He kind of just pinch himself, you know. I don't feel it anymore. He'd repeat himself. You know, you'd think that it'd be useful or some kind of great gift. But it's just, he kind of stammers and tries to find the words. I don't know, it's just not the same anymore. As he looks around at the world. He kind of just starts to stand up and head back to the shack.
Just leaving Tallow there, nodding to himself as he stays behind to have a bit of solitude.
The thing that I do still feel, though, he continue as he's kind of walking back. You feel the gaze of every person whose life you've ended. You feel their eyes lock on yours. The weight of what you've done, it clings to you. It clings to me. I wish I wasn't the man I was, he'd say, and then step back and step inside the shack and find a place to rest.
Tallow's lost in Igram's words there and goes to open his mouth to say something and looks over and sees that Igram's now gone back inside the shack. And one face is clinging to Tallow's mind, resonating after Igram's words there. Just one face. He closes his eyes and shakes it off. And stays out for a bit more air.
And as we fade away from that scene, we fade from that night into the next morning. As the four of you begin to stir and wake up to an empty shack. Completely empty. There's no tables, there's no Myra, there's no kitchen, no tools. There's only the four of you. As you begin to stir and wake, you just find this barren, nearly rotten room. The events of the night before still easily come to mind, but this shack that you're in, other than the walls and the floor and the roof, be hard-pressed to find any similarities, as it's completely and totally empty.
Well, it looks like we're messed up.
No, this is the work of the doctor and his companions. You realize this is a
Don't you
sign.
get it? We hallucinated everything. None of that was real.
You tell me you hallucinated it when you take your shit from that delicious food.
I guess we'll find out then, but I really don't think that that happened. I think that it's just messed with our minds. And he would think back, how else would it make sense that she knew all of that about us, that we came from there, that the doctor came into the town ahead of us and then told her? That doesn't make any sense. We went straight here.
He just appeared before us. He can travel faster than us, obviously.
Oh, obviously.
Igrim would awake at the sound of Kira and Ignatius talking. And as he wakes up and kind of sees how the scenery has changed a bit, he goes through this routine of, okay, do I have my armor, my clothes, my weapons, my belongings? It's a routine because he knows he's woken up, essentially, in very strange locations that he doesn't recognize all the time. Many times, 17 times, in fact. And as he, sees the companions around him, some sleeping and then they're kind of arguing, he just kind of stands up and kind of looks around. What the hell happened? Where'd they go?
We hallucinated. Our minds are fucked.
Tallow does a similar. Go ahead.
No, go for it.
Tallow has a similar sort of routine when he wakes up. He's used to sleeping in strange places, cramped little corners and hideouts and things. So he keeps all of his stuff with him. He wakes up and does a similar sort of patting down of himself to sort of make sure he's got everything. And he reaches in and pulls out from his pocket, perhaps absent-mindedly actually, sort of, he always keeps food scraps in his pocket, so he pulls out one for breakfast as everyone's sort of having this discussion and chewing on what looks to be a piece of bread from the night before.
Damn, that's a pretty vivid hallucination. Igrim would kind of chime in, looking at the piece of bread that Tallow has, and looking to you, Ignatius.
Tallow's really groggy, just waking up, so he's just putting it together as well. And Tallow reaches into his other pocket and chucks the other chunk of bread to Ignatius.
So Ignatius would catch it, kind of take a bite, and as he chews, kind of think to himself, okay, well, I think this is the same bread. And then
Don't jump to conclusions so quickly, hothead. A bit of patience would do you well.
and then he'd pull off a bit of the bread in his hand and ignite the flames, and then let them go, and then toss this piece of toast to Kira.
Thank you. She'll gladly eat it.
Sorry, my mistake.
So what the hell did happen then? As Tallow's looking around. So even the shack is not there. Sorry, Jeff, did you say? Or it's there but just empty?
It's literally just 4 walls, a roof, and a floor, and nothing. There's still a door. There's still the shack, but everything that was in the shack is not there, except for you guys and your stuff.
I'd step outside to see if that petrified tree that I was leaning up against last night is still there.
And it would be. And so would be the other handfuls of shacks and the barren field and the horizon of the ruined old world that you would come from. Everything is the same except the inside of the shack.
Well, I suppose the alchemists work in mysterious ways. And as he's still chomping on the bread, he sort of does that thing where he holds it in his mouth to free up a hand while he's reaching in to pull out that map that Myra had a look at last night, and just sort of holds it up, assuming everyone knows what it is. So where do we want to go?
Did she say anything when I stepped out last night? Any direction?
She seems to think we might be able to get to the region where my hometown is, or maybe was, depending, in about a week. And my head's a bit jumbled. I think she said the direction. Follow the river. And he looks over to Kira and Ignatius to see if they remember the details of the direction.
What was the name of their town?
Ashton, in the Dust Bowl.
And so, okay, well, she said to head out that way, and he would kind of like point in the general direction and skirt, and he would continue and skirt around the old world, but you could always try and just shortcut it and go through.
I do not want to go back through that place.
I'd say quicker is better. Take the shortcut. Less time we're out there. He kind of, glances with his head or his hand, at the wilderness. The longer we're out there, the more dangerous it is. We might even be able to cut our time in half if we go. And he kind of points. If we go through there.
Okay.
Are you guys crazy?
Well, let's double check the old lady anyways. Who knows? She could be wrong. And so Ignatius lights his hand on a flame and then kind of takes a knee to the ground and says, this will take a little bit. As he kind of starts burning into the ground underneath him, and his eyes turn black as he starts to just chant under his breath. It almost sounds like mummering. So I'm casting a ritual spell. Guiding Hand. So basically, if there's a map of the place that exists in the world, and it's like some kind of landmark, like a town or mountain or whatever, so as he finishes writing, he holds his hand up as he stands up, and a flame appears. And so this flame basically will leave from him and kind of float in the air in the direction of whatever place it was. So that means that if this place is Ashton, then the flame would kind of move like 5 feet away from me in that direction.
Yeah, and you would see as this flame goes out away from you that it would go in. Now, she told you to go around the city, but this flame basically goes straight in the direction towards it. And you would see it cut straight in to what would basically be north of you guys, but in towards the city.
I'd say follow the torch. The torch leads the way.
Tano reluctantly agrees if you guys start trekking that direction. He'll just start following behind. He was actually staring in awe as Ignatius was performing this ritual, and trying to himself just really interested in it and sort of trying to pick up what he was doing to no avail, obviously. But Yeah, he'll follow along.
All right, here we go. So Ignatius would just head off in the direction of this flame, and the flame just hovers 5 feet in front of him, kind of sticking true in that direction. As we go into the old world, Rip.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Igrim
and
would
it's-
follow close behind with his kind of hand at his sword, at his hip, and his spear kind of readied, and fasten any buckles of his stuff and make sure his backpack's not loose and stuff, and just kind of be on alert. But as you said, the quicker we make it through, the less in danger we'll be in. So yeah, he's just eager to go as well, following this beacon of light that Ignatius has made.
And it's not too far after that as the group sets out, being led by this flame, that you find yourselves at the edge of the old world, the ruined buildings, now directly in front of you, as you prepare to venture back in to the depths you had only just recently made it out of. And that's where we'll go ahead and take a quick break. So we'll go ahead and take 5 minutes, do what you need to do, get any food, anything like that, and we'll be right back.
Corey, I like how our characters, great minds think alike. Why not just bull rush head first into danger? No worries.
Dude, nothing's dangerous when you're a beast.
Nothing's dangerous when you can't die.
That's true. You don't have anything to worry about, like legitimately.
Yeah, I was thinking about it. I'm like, what would Ingram do? And I like look at my personality traits, for the stuff. Is like a simple, direct solution is often the best path to success. So I'm like, okay, straight through we go again. Sounds good.
For some reason, we're 2 for 2, where me and Keel's character just don't get along.
It also makes
I know.
everything's more human that way, with like instead of
Just
everyone agreeing all the
0%.
time. Yeah.
It's like I feel like whenever I play with Jeff, it's like that too, where our characters usually don't see eye to eye.
Yeah, but somehow just barely manage to not kill each other. Usually,
It's like, well, you're useful as a toaster, and you're useful as a mouse keeper. So I guess we'll stay together.
as much as I don't like you, our chances of survival are probably still better as a group. So let's be pragmatic here.
Pragmatism
I gotta-
is for wimps.
I gotta say, I'm like totally loving this like weird like religious cult that's developing around the Doctor.
That's
It's
super
so
awesome.
love it.
I
great.
like it a lot.
I mean,
And like this
if you
total
think
kickback
about-
against it.
if someone like brought me back to life, it would be really hard not to be worshiping them.
It's also like in game, they're the closest thing to the gods that exist, right? Like they're trying to learn the secret of the gods, essentially.
Mm.
And so they're,
Kira hopes that
Super powerful, yeah.
through worship she can hopefully gain some secrets of these guys and gain power herself.
Also, Corey,
love it.
when you stepped down and did that little like chant or whatever, I thought your character was just being sarcastic of like, I'm going to ask, the alchemist character a
I'm
question.
gonna ask the
Help.
Doctor. I'll burn my message through the flames.
Yeah, I thought you were just like doing a big sarcastic thing, and I was about to, start.
That would have been
dying
so
laughing.
freaking awesome.
Oh man, if you reskinned it that way or flavored it that way, Tello would have believed it 100%.
Oh, Dr. Wibbity Doo, I call upon you in this time of need.
Yeah, which way should we go?
Yeah.
That would. I should have totally done that.
I would have given
See,
you
Tallow.
like 4,000 points of inspiration if you did that.
We can retcon that real quick, right? Add that to your character sheet, Corey. 5,000 was it?
Always advantage all the time.
Even as many points of inspiration as that monster had hit points. So
Dude, I would have assessed that chick to see how many HP she had, but I'm pretty sure I was out of points
Ow.
from last session. Otherwise, I wasn't sure if I had 2 left or not, so I just didn't.
Yeah. Speaking of which, that will count as a long rest. You guys got a nice meal and a good sleep. So go ahead and fully restore all your HP, all your magics, all your everything.
yeah, we're not doing any custom rules for like recovery or anything, right? Or just using the straight up player handbook rules for that.
Sorry, what was that?
We're not using any like custom or variant recovery rules, are we? Because I know there's some that are like you don't gain hit points back, or you have to use this thing or the other thing.
No, we'll just keep it raw for now.
Cool. Yeah.
I thought about doing variant longer resting rules, but given how much HP strain this setting and alternate rules can impose, I figured it probably would be better to. I don't want to put too much variant rules in all at the same time. Like, I'd rather kind of see them work piece by piece first. But yeah, just regular 8-hour long rest.
Sounds cool. Yep. It was something we discussed, a few months ago and never really came to a conclusion on. But yeah, cool.
Yeah.
Awesome. That works with me.
Can I ask, Jeff? Tello's got the urchin background, and one of the features of that is city secrets. Travel twice as fast in cities when you're outside of combat. I just wanted to see whether with the old world that's like completely foreign and that wouldn't really apply, would it?
Yeah, I'm gonna say that would be a little tough because like I think that would like the layout of the old world, like it's hard to still call it a city. Like
That's
there's
what I
so
thought.
much weirdness there. But it's like yeah, it would be hard to say whether or not that would count. At the same time, I'm trying to think if there's any possible scenario in the world that it would count in if it wasn't here.
Yeah, I was thinking that once I realized there were no real cities in the world, I was like, I'm sure I'll be able to use this at some point. It's
The
all
way
good.
that we used it in a different game was that instead of like moving twice as fast, is like you would find shortcuts to lead your companions through, or like no actual city secrets, essentially, giving it less of a mechanical tie, more of a just like here's something you know because of your city secrets, essentially.
I'm happy for it to just be like whatever with my hometown or something like that.
You just
Up
run
to you,
really
Jeff.
fast.
We can figure it out. All good.
Yeah, because I don't have anything off the top of my head for that one, but we can talk about it in the between times, and I can figure out a way that it might be able to come up. Alrighty, well, unless there is anything else, we'll go ahead and get back into it. So, it's been 3 days since you walked up to the edge of the old world. You've been venturing through the ruins for a while now. And while you've run into the occasional creatures of shadow, not unlike the ones that you burned away in the cathedral that you woke up in, nothing too far outside of your abilities has presented itself to you. You're kind of cutting across the outer edge of the city, so while you're cutting through it, you're not really diving that deep into the heart of it. But as the as we see the four of you kind of moving through these ruins, as you kind of crest up towards the top of a hill, where there used to be some building set at the top of it, now there's only just broken foundations and scattered pieces of rock. You would hear on the other edge of the hill, out of your range of sight still, what sounds like a couple people. They're speaking loudly towards someone. It's near yelling. So, man, are you going to tell us where you left that treasure or not? If you don't speak up, we're going to have to take some actions against your silence. You hear a couple other people like, yeah, tell us, and just like kind of agreeing with this person who was speaking.
You guys hear that?
Yes, yes, I heard it. Be quiet. What is it? Are there people up there?
Sounds like thieves. We can probably just traipse around the outside. They won't even notice us.
It sounded like they had someone cornered. We should save them.
What? No. Better them than us.
This is the old world. They might sound like people, but shit knows what they are.
I'm glad we're on the same page, kid. Let's go that way.
Fine, but let's do it quietly.
Abram's kind of torn. He sees the logic in both parties here. whether we avoid them because they may be dangerous or just not worth our time. Or he kind of reflects a bit on what it would be like to be someone cornered by thieves or bandits. And he has a moment of hesitation as he kind of maybe wraps his fingers on the shaft of his spear a bit in nervousness. Not nervousness, in contemplation. Come on, he kind of whisper to the three of you. It sounds like he needs their help.
Igrim, I don't want to let an innocent suffer when we could help, but we need to survive ourselves. We don't know what we'd be getting into.
Besides, I mean, if he just tells them where the treasure is, they're going to let him go. So it's fine.
Think about it. There could be a valuable treasure. If we save him, maybe he will tell us instead of them.
No, I know this too well. They're not going to let him go. After he speaks, if he speaks. He's going to be a dead man in a pile of his own blood. In a pool of his own blood. Soon. You know how it is out here. An ally gained is an ally well sought. We could use someone to be on our side. Come on, Kira.
Kira draws her bow and says, I'm with you, Igrum.
No one deserves something like this. And he would kind of skirt around the the rubble or ruins or what have yous to perhaps get a better vantage point at the scene of what's the incident that's going on. He'd prefer to do it out of sight. He's very proficient in finding places where he wouldn't be seen by onlookers. And he kind of used that, the terrain essentially as at his advantage to try and find a vantage point.
All right. Yeah. Anyone who's going to scout, so Igrum and anybody else who would go along, go ahead and give me stealth at advantage.
Oh, what? How do we determine that? Do we roll these things? I didn't. Just
Yeah,
kidding.
yeah, we have these things called dice. Sometimes it's pretty rare, but
Yeah.
so as Igrum, Kira, and Ignatius kind of begin moving off to different points up this hill, trying to get a better vantage point of the situation going on. All of you would do so with relative quiet. And once you were to make it up to your varying points along this hill, looking down, you would see, looks like it must have been like a courtyard or something. Like if there was some type of building set at the top of the hill that went down into almost this like plaza at the bottom. Most of the walls or any sort of structure that would denote that are long gone. You would see in the middle of this courtyard area at the bottom of the hill a man completely bound in rope. He's seated on the ground, his arms tied along his body, and his legs tied together. Surrounded by 4 other people. They'd have most of their body and faces hidden. They all have knives. One of them is pointing directly at this tied up man as they kind of shout at him to tell him information.
Igrim would kind of look down upon this scene, and he'd count the number of people, and he kind of give like these hand gestures up to Kira and Ignatius. Whether or not they understand them is another story. He goes, the number of bandits, the one captive. He kind of like essentially lay out the situation from his vantage point, using these kind of hand gestures.
Yeah, I think Kira would get it and like kind of move into position.
Ignatius is going to do something really stupid, and he's going to create. I imagine him like kind of looking over, kind of like the crest of the hill or whatever, and so he's going to hold his hand out and turn the flames black, and then create a large area of darkness, kind of over the top of that. So it's like sitting on top of that like vantage point, and so that's his current action. So before he does anything else, someone else can do something, or in that case, I'll just keep going. All right, so the darkness forms, and then he steps inside of it, and his eyes turn black again, and he can see perfectly through it as he just shoots out a ball of fire towards one of these bandits, so they make a dex save.
That is a 11.
All right, so he takes 2 fire damage as the mote of flame kind of lands and splashes against him.
Yeah, and as this fire kind of splashes against him, I imagine part of his shirt kind of catches a little bit under the blaze. And he yelps out in surprise and fear, kind of patting at the flame, trying to put it out. All of the bandits kind of start just yelling as one of them like points up towards this like globe of darkness that's sitting up at the top of the hill. And we will go ahead and at this point move into initiative.
So Jeff, Tello stayed behind. He hasn't sort of crept up with the others. Can he see any of his companions from where he is at the moment, or can he see the darkness that Ignatius has just set?
Yeah, so most of your companions are kind of at the crest of the hill, so you would be able to see them, but not what they see.
Yeah.
So you would see the globe of darkness, and you would see Igrum and Kira. But that's all that you would see.
I imagine you also saw like the gestures that I made. Whether or not they make sense to you is another question, but
Oh, he saw him and he's very intrigued.
Yeah.
He's going to try and learn it off you later.
Was this Igrum? You see this bolt of fire plunge out of this complete circle of darkness. It makes a little bit of contact with the bandit, not doing any major damage, but it definitely surprises him and does a little bit of a scorch. He pats the lingering cinders out from his shirt as the attention of the bandits is drawn upwards towards this darkness.
And to clarify, the globe of darkness is covering Ignatius only.
Yeah, it's like just like what is it? It's a
seemed
10-foot
like-
radius globe that Ignatius is kind of like using as cover as he's starting to
Yeah.
just shoot the flames out.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and it
so I
seemed like you
kinda-
guys had kind of gone around the hill to kind of take different points. So I'd imagine that only he would be covered.
Yeah, I see all of a sudden, Ignatius act first a little bit, kind of jumping the gun almost, Ingram would feel. But he would see this as an opportunity as these thieves are distracted by this ball of darkness hurling flame. But he would run down the hill and just essentially dash action down the hill. Maybe bounding and jumping, from maybe like down a rubbled staircase down onto a landing and then run down. And he'd essentially close the distance. He'd have just his long spear out and essentially going to strike next turn.
Yeah, and you're able to completely close with the group of these bandits, and they kind of shout, almost taken by surprise with the reckless abandon that you charged down this hill. Excuse me, towards them, and they kind of ready up their knives at you as you charge down at them. Otalo, from where you're at, you would just see Igram at the top of the hill just disappear behind the crest of it. What would you like to do?
Yeah. He runs up the hill to join with Kira, and it's all kicked off now. So he's got no reason to sort of stay behind. So is that 30 feet up the hill to make it to the top, or?
Yeah, with your movement, I'd say you could get to the crest of the hill.
Okay. And just quickly taking in what's happening, seeing Igram as Igram disappears from Tallo's sight and charges down. Tallow goes and charges up the hill, comes up alongside Kira, and and sees that she's got her bow out and says to her, well, since we're here, let's spare this life. And just want to use my bonus action to give Kira one of my bardic inspiration die. So you can use it within 10 minutes, Kira, to get, I've got it written right here, I just can't see it, get advantage on a check, save, or attack roll. Sorry, no, not advantage. You can roll the d6 and add it to a check, save, or attack roll within 10 minutes. And that's his turn.
And as this is happening, these four bandits are closing in on you, Igram. Towards you, you kind of keep them at bay with your spear, kind of shoving them back, leaving them no opportunity to strike you. But as you kind of push two of them away, the other two come around the sides, rushing in towards you. They both slash into you. Their side, one on your arm, one on your side, cutting a little bit below your spear arm. You're going to take 9 damage total between the two attacks, as these bandits cut at you with these blades. As they see, I imagine, like, with it being Igram, like, he probably hardly reacts to these cuts, and the lack of reaction. You can kind of see the unnerved look on the bandits' faces as they slash what would kill most commoners. But Igram is just basically not affected. But they continue on towards you. Kira, you see these four bandits just rush Ingram, just surrounding him. Two of them kind of kept at bay, not being able to attack, but two of them sink in, cutting at his sides.
Yeah, Kira is watching the entire scene fold out and watching where everyone's moving, how the bandits are moving, and how they're attacking. And she'll use her cunning action again for insightful fighting. So it's my insight check versus your deception. And this will be against the fighters that are not engaged, or one fighter that's not engaged with Igram. Damn, this die is not. 8.
Yeah, I got a 16. So you try to take a moment to study them. And it's like right when you think you're like, oh, like these guys are just moving like common bandits would. Like he does something that like you're not expecting. Like he moves in a way that you weren't predicting him to move, and just something about the way he moves kind of throws off your sense. You're not quite sure why.
Yeah. Okay. So he definitely, it's a style that I have not seen before in this. Maybe he learned it in the old wood, who knows, or in the old world. So I'm gonna shoot him anyway with my short bow. There we go. 22.
Sorry, that's not going to hit. I'm kidding.
6 damage.
22,
Thwack.
6 damage. Yeah.
I'm watching him and I'm like, what? I haven't seen that type of maneuver before. Thwack.
Yeah, the arrow sinks in. Lets out a groan of pain just, as the arrow just cuts right into him. He lets out a growl of pain. He almost looks like he goes to like step back away, but the other bandit, one of the other bandits, looks over and just says, "Don't you dare run!" And he kind of just like doesn't quite know what to do, but he moves back in towards Ingram, readying his blade again. Ignatius.
Yeah, so Ignatius is actually going to take a moment to peer into the minds of his new friends, this guy who's tied up, and a couple of the bandits, as I use read moods. So you can think on this for a second, but basically, the three of you, 2 of the bandits, and the guy who's tied up, I get a 1-word summary of your emotional state. And then before that ends, I'll have one of the bandits make a dex save for another mote of flame.
Ooh, that is a modified 20 on the dex save.
Oh, that saves it as I miss.
All right, so you said you get an emotional reading of, is it all of the bandits and the tied up person?
Just two of the bandits, the tied up person, and then my 3 companions.
Oh, the 3 companions as well. Nice.
Determined.
So what? Ooh, determination.
Ooh.
That's awesome. Now, how about Igram? What's Igram's 1-word emotional summary?
It would actually be, it would feel weird to you, Ignatius, because at first it feels like duty, and then it shifts to sadistic as you read his emotion.
Oh God.
Ignatius just busted this thing wide open.
Yeah.
And what about Kira? What's Kira's 1-word emotional state?
I would say confident. She feels pretty good right now.
Nice.
So Ignatius would kind of like, and kind of like, it's not quite what he expected, and then he would stare over at Ingram at the oddity of what he felt there.
Yeah. And from everybody else that you actually, it's gonna be kind of weird because I know it's not exactly the mechanical thing, but make me an insight check.
16.
From the two bandits and the tied up person, you feel the same emotion from all of them, fear.
Hmm.
All right, and then yeah, you hurl the bolt of fire, but Igram's kind of driving them away with the spear. He drives them out of your shot. The time it takes to come down the hill, not accounting for that sudden move, is not able to make contact with one of the bandits. And that will circle us back up top to Igram.
One of these bandits just stabs me right in the gut. A spot that would, kill or disable most people. There's a sword kind of just in there. A little bit of bile and blood is starting to leak out. Kind of coat the blade and drip down his stomach. His eyes' pupils just start to dilate, open. This stern, look changes and shifts to one where this creepy, eerie grin starts to creep across his face. As he reaches forward at the arm of the bandit who's holding the sword, and kind of just brings him in closer, at the same time just shoving the spear tip through this bandit. I am using my reckless attack ability, so now all bandits have advantage against me, and I'm activating my barbarian rage. So I get
Awesome.
a 24 to hit, which I'm assuming hits.
I'll do it. And are you attacking the one that's been wounded by the arrow, or a fresh one?
I'm guessing a fresh one.
Cool.
This is the one that got me with a good hit. And with this spear plunge, I do 10 points of piercing damage and 2 points of necrotic damage as he starts to dread his own existence or something. He feels his own mortality as I just drive this spear tip into him by pulling him essentially onto my spear. Meanwhile, grinning and maybe even chuckling inaudibly as I do so.
Awesome. That's actually enough to kill this bandit. Yeah, as you just pull him onto the spear, just letting it just slowly. I imagine slowly, just driving it through, just between the force of your arm and the point of the spear. Like it's not a quick thrust. It's like that slow burn effect as the spear just slowly makes its way through his body. But it pierces right through vital organs, and you just slumps against the spear, bleeding out onto it, blood running down the shaft of the spear and onto the ground. And you just kick him off or shove him off, and he falls to the ground, bleeding out to a certain death. All right, and Tallow, you see one of these bandits skewered on a spear, kicked off. Another one has an arrow. Another one is slightly singed. Another one is basically untouched. But there are 3 of them.
So Tallow would give Kira a quick pat on the shoulder as he gets up and over the crest of the hill, and just starts dagger drawn, just starts making his way around, trying to sort of shepherd them in a bit to prevent them from getting away. So he'll use his dash action as well, but not come in right up close to engage with one of them, just sort of position himself around the other side as much as he can. And that's it for this turn.
Awesome. Yeah, you kind of run down the hill, kind of just keeping them encircling these bandits, trying to cut off any avenues of escape if they were to try to run. But so far, they don't seem intent on running, at least not yet. The 3 remaining, right as you kind of kick them off of your spear, Igram, the one that you just slain, is when the other 3 charge in at you again, trying to take you down. You're able to keep the first one back, but the second one makes contact for 7 slashing damage. It comes in from your right side. As you push one bandit back, the next one is right there to take his place. The third strikes and he crits. Yeah, my boy. Whew, and that's max damage. So that'll be 18 piercing damage. You kick one bandit off the spear and you use it to push another one back. Right as this happens, Igram, you just see the point of this guy's sword come in from your back. You can see it out of your stomach as he just runs you through the blade entirely. And as he pulls the blade out, seeing you somehow still standing, the other 3 of you would see him cut this terrified look kind of falling over these 3 bandits as they've like shanked like 5 people's worth of people in Igram, and he still stands. Kira, you've seen Igram just take a slash and then basically be impaled through his side, but he's still there.
Igram! Fuck. I'm going to. I think I would get sneak attack in this situation anyway, right? Okay.
They're all within 5 feet of him, so yeah.
Okay. I'm going to, just attack with my bow then. 19.
Yeah, that's plenty.
Okay. And that is 9 points of damage.
All right, is that against the same one that you shot?
It's the one that critted
Oh,
Ingram. Because basically I saw right as he impaled him that, he was trying to pull his weapon out and it got a little stuck. I saw my opportunity to try to shoot him.
yeah, and the arrow pierces right into him. Lets out another howl of pain. Well, for him, the first howl of pain that he's made. You can see he falls to one knee from the force of the arrow, just kind of grunting, trying to shake the pain away. But he does barely manage to pull himself up to his feet. But he is severely wounded.
Okay, and then as my cunning action, can I try to dash to the guy that's all tied up?
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah, you sprint down the hill with your movement and your cunning action to dash, and you're able to make it. That's still pretty close to the fray, but you are able to make it as close as you'd like to get to him.
Okay. I'll try to go as far as I can around but still making it within that dash action. So if it provokes an attack of opportunity, then that's fine.
No, at this point, they are all thoroughly distracted by this monster that they're trying to take down in Igram.
Lich. Gosh.
All right, yeah. Kira has just fired an arrow into one of the bandits. 2 of them have arrows sticking out of their torsos. Another one is slightly singed from your previous first fireball. But they are all standing Ignatius.
All right, you said the one is pretty beat up, right? So I'm gonna have him make the dex save.
Both of the ones that have taken arrows look pretty bad. One of them looks especially bad.
Yeah, so I'll have that one take the dex save.
And that's going to be an 8 total.
Perfect. 6 damage. So does that kill him?
Yeah. How does it look as this fire destroys him?
All right. So Ignatius holds his hand up and kind of conjures a flame to erupt from the ground underneath him there, as the flame rises and just burns him up and into ash. And then he yells out from the darkness, Surrender, drop your weapons, or perish.
Awesome. Yeah, one of them just burns. The fire kills him. He turns into ash. The shadow within him being just completely obliterated by the magic of this fire, falling into the same gray dust that you remember so vividly from days prior. Is completely incinerated. And go ahead and make me an intimidation with advantage, Ignatius.
9. Actually, can I use my inspiration to reroll?
9 is actually still gonna do it.
Oh, dope. Perfect.
I gave them disadvantage as well, given the circumstances. So you had like super advantage. And the 2 remaining bandits, one of them with the arrow, the other one slightly burned. Both of them let go of their blades. They clatter to the rock and dirt below. But given their proximity to Igram, neither of them feels completely comfortable running away yet, as that would be certain death if Igram were to attack in that moment. But that still leaves them as we move it back around to Igram. The 2 bandits have dropped their weapons. They seem intent on running, but they are at your mercy first.
Igram, with this just ear-to-ear grin, baring his teeth, these just black eyes. He has his spear in one hand. He kind of just reaches down to his side and unsheathes the sword from his gut, as if it was just a scabbard for his sword. And he would just advance and just plunge the sword upwards in the neck area of this bandit as he kind of like cowers backwards. I get a 17 to hit.
Yeah, it's absolutely going to hit.
Doing 7 points of longsword damage and 6 points of necrotic.
Yeah, that's enough to kill him. How does it look?
I right in the neck, as he just brings the sword out from his side, and just one fluid motion, just brings it up, and just even with this immense strength that Igram has, just like lifts this bandit off the ground a bit as the bandit tried to like grasps onto the blade of the sword, gripping it tightly. His hand and palm is being cut as he tries to desperately, pull himself off. But immediately as it just pierces the skull, he falls limp, just blood just dripping from his face. And Igram turns to the next bandit, his spear in his hand. Just, this man kind of skewered on his sword, and he's going to use his bonus action to attack with his other-handed weapon. At this guy, just again, maybe a shoulder or something attack. Getting
so real quick while this is happening. Yeah, while this is happening, real quick, Kira, go ahead and make me a perception roll.
Seven.
Yeah, so yeah, you just your eyes. I imagine your eyes are just like glued to this like sadistic display from Igram. Igram, go ahead and roll me that damage.
Yeah, so I got a 16 to hit, and I do 5 points of piercing damage with the spear, and 4 points of necrotic, as well as I just rip the life from him as I just plunge the spear into his shoulder area.
Yeah,
maybe
and that's
like
enough to kill.
Yeah,
That's enough to kill him too. The spear piercing, like you said, just right through his ribs, cracking and piercing his lungs. Blood filling up. He chokes on his own blood, trying to spitting out blood onto the ground, but he's not. It doesn't matter how much he spits out.
Igram would drop the sword that's like through the guy's head, and he just have the spear in 2 hands. He could just pull it out with a foot, and he turned to the.
I'm actually going to say real quick, Igram, go ahead and gain a D4's worth of shadow for that. for your sadistic acts.
Yep, sounds good. That was a big number on a D4. As I just like these, still I have these huge dilated pupils, this kind of toothy grin as I just turn with this bloodied mess. I'm just garbled with blood as I turn to the man that's bound in ropes, and also Kira, who's also right there. He's breathing calmly and like shallowly, not shallowly, but he's breathing calmly and controlled. He's not, like, for exerting himself a lot. It's just super controlled, shallow breathing.
Yeah. And as you turn, you see this man is bound on the ground, and this is what he looks like, though a little less gray. He's dressed in very fine clothes, much finer than you're used to seeing. And you would see Igram, as you look down at him, that he's smiling. And the ropes tying him disintegrate as they're burned away. He stands up to his feet and says, "You're getting stronger, Igram, and meaner."
How does he know you?
I feel that Igram would just, as soon as he locks eyes with this person, his pupils would return back to normal. His face would sink. Almost a look of fear on his eyes, on his face. He probably drops the spear onto the ground, and the wood bounces and vibrates and clatters on the stone and on the dirt. He's just very, very, I guess, paralyzed by what he's seeing and who's talking.
And he would
Tallows
feel this
down.
kind of thick sensation, and of course through him. Igram, you don't recognize this person physically that you're looking at, but the physical appearance does not distract from that gut sickness feeling of familiarity.
I feel it's like the piercing green eyes. I think that would give it away. Maybe that's something that's shared. But he's just paralyzed. And he's kind of tries to snap to and reaches, he kind of tries to reach for the sword on his hip, in his actual scabbard, not his flesh scabbard. And he kind of just starts to pull it out, but he's fumbling with it. Maybe it's stuck, or his hands are actually shaking at this point.
Tallows down
Stammering
down
and not
nearby.
making words.
Sorry. Tallows down nearby, and he was actually, as Igram dispatched the last bandit, Tallow was kind of okay and starting to approach the what looked like the hostage when this all happened. And so Tallow's just standing there quite close by the two of them, just sort of looking between them as well, and addresses Igram, seeing that he's sort of catatonic. Igram, who the hell is this?
Oh, you didn't tell your friends about me. That's quite rude of you.
He would kind of stammer. He's, as you said, catatonic. He's trying to act. He's shaking in his boots, essentially. This the presence of this individual is certainly able to shake Igrum, the man who so far has shown no fear.
And he walks up to you, Igrum, and he touches the side of your face lightly with a couple of his fingers. He just looks right at you and says, "Come on, what would your wife say if she knew you were still around, killing for fun? Thought you were supposed to kick that habit. You sure haven't changed much for all the talk."
Is he an alchemist? Like the doctor?
How dare you speak of my wife that way? And in that kind of sentence, he's able to kind of get a little bit of a nerve, essentially, as he's able to unsheath the sword, and he's going to attempt to again impale this guy on his sword.
He doesn't move at all. You stab the sword right into him. He just foolhardy as ever, Igrum. He reaches his hand up and he grabs the sword by the blade. And with one quick motion, there's the sound of crunching and snapping metal. As that part of the sword just is completely crushed, the tip of the blade still sticking into his chest, as you're left with a hilt and half a sword. He pulls the fragment of the sword out of his chest, just tosses it on the ground. Just not a drop of blood.
Give them back! Igrum would yell at him, just like spit splattering his face.
Seeing this display, Tallow. Sorry, no go. Tallow bursts into action. He just trying to do anything he can to try and sort of save Igrum, and he races up, sort of takes a couple of steps up a bit of rubble, and just calls out something like, "You bloody fiend!" And as he slams on the ground, it's as if he expected something else to happen, like in the cathedral where he did the earth shatter, but nothing happens. He was trying to land next to this guy to try and sort of disrupt him so we could try and get away or something like that, but he just lands down on one knee, and that's it. And then he sort of scrambles back.
He turns his head over towards you, Tallow. Just says, "Come on, no need to be so violent. Just here to check up on my friend. Wanted to see how well he's holding up the deal we made." He looks up the hill. "You gonna stand in that silly shadow spell of yours for the rest of the day up there, fireman?"
And so Ignatius dispels the shadow with a wave of his hand and then peers into this creature as I use assess foe. And I want to know his current HP total, vulnerabilities, immunities, resistances. You can message me over Facebook if you want to.
Yeah, I think I will message you just because it's funner that way. Sorry, it was
Yeah, so it's
what were the stats? Oh,
so
there
it's
it is.
HP. Yeah. Yeah, we'll see. He's still typing, which is concerning.
99999. A few extra nines.
I wouldn't put it past Jeff.
13 digits and immunity is everything. When he's just listing them instead of just saying everything.
Oh shit. Got it. Yeah, so Ignatius would walk down and kind of hold his hands up. And then he would actually speak to this thing and he would say, so what exactly is this deal? He wouldn't really tell me.
Well, I mean, unfortunately for me, client confidentiality is crucial to my business, so I'll leave that to Igram to describe as he sees fit. It's not my place to speak on his behalf. He just looks over to Igram. He puts a hand on your shoulder as if you were like best friends, reunited after a long time apart. And he says, well, you look well. Keep it up. I'll be back someday. And he turns around and just begins to walk away.
As he walks away, Igram builds the courage, the nerve to kind of yell out at this being. He'd say, next time I see you, your head's on a pike.
And Ignatius would just laugh, just burst out. He doesn't mean that. He doesn't mean that.
He turns back, looks at you, Igram, with just a smile on his face, like you had just told the best joke in the world. And he looks over to Ignatius. Don't worry about your friend's petty threats. Both he and I know there's nothing that he can do. He's made his choice. He'll live with it. If you guys are ever in the need of any information or power, I'd be happy to make a deal with you too. Igram can tell you how to find me.
No one will need anything from you, demon.
Clearly, at least one of you did.
Igram would say to the effect of, go fuck yourself, to that.
The figure would just shrug casually. Any other outbursts? Or can I walk away?
Have a nice day, sir. And he would kind of like bow.
Tallo's just glaring at him, studying him while he's sort of on his butt and hands after his little stunt. Doesn't say anything, but he's just really intently studying him.
Igram's feet are glued to the ground. Essentially, his muscles are kind of locked up in this paralysis of fear and just emotion, essentially. He wishes he could chase after him, cut off his head and, stick it on a pike, but he just can't will himself to move.
The figure turns back around, and as he's walking away, with a snap of the finger, you'd see the three other bodies of the bandits that hadn't already been burned. All three of them light up, ablaze, in sync, and turn to ash. As this figure walks off into the ruins, just as casually as he had come. A few moments pass before he vanishes behind through the buildings. He's out of sight.
Igrim would find a loose stone and just kick it at something. Not a person, just like kick it out of kind of frustration and anger. Ah! He punt this rock across the plaza, and it kind of maybe clatters off of a stone wall or something. As he just kind of curses under his breath and kind of stamps around, frustrated and angry, mumbling to himself.
And so Ignatius would just start talking, like to Ingram, but not specifically, just talking aloud. As he says, you can't fight that thing. It's impossible. That's probably the strongest creature I've ever seen.
Even the strongest of giants can be felled. He kind of yell out, just white knuckle fists. Maybe he'd find a tree and just like punch it or something.
You've only died 17 times now, so I mean, let's see, probably another 5,000, 6,000 deaths. Maybe you'd be able to beat him.
If that's what it takes.
And that's provided that he doesn't heal or regenerate or anything between each of those deaths.
Or maybe there's another way, Tello says as he sort of stands up and dusts himself off.
Yeah, what's this deal? Maybe you just need to finish that and he'll let you go. Or is it already finished?
Maybe the doctor can help.
Damn it, Kira, the doctor can't help anyone. He's a farce. He's a liar. He blinded us to help us last time. Who knows how he'd help this time?
You're standing here right now. How can you say that? You know he brought us back.
He tried to burn us to death like these idiots. He gestures down to the piles of ash next to them. All right? If it wasn't for all of us individually, that's what we'd be. As he kind of gestures, like throwing something into the wind.
Everything can die. Everything has a weak spot.
Not him. As Ignatius just says that with absolute certainty.
How can you be so sure? You seem so strong and confident, yet now you buckle your knees like a coward.
I'm confident, not arrogant. I know the line between the two.
Igrim, what does he want from you? Is there a contract?
I don't fucking know what he wants from me, all right? He kind of would, kick another rock at that. He's frustrated. He's confused.
And I know this is like kind of a bad time, but didn't I tell you we should just go around? As he kind of like glances over at Tallow, like over at Igrim. It's like, that was basically a waste of time. We killed these people for nothing.
And Tallow just kind of gives Ignatius a look like, yeah, I know, but come on, man. And then just sort of braces for Igrim's reaction to that.
Igrim just like he's breathing heavily in this outrage. But he starts to try and, calm himself with controlled breathings. He kind of like clenches his fists as he continues to kind of pace around this plaza. He just stops talking essentially and tries to calm himself down.
Remember my promise, Igrim. We'll find out what he wants. Another day. We're alive, yeah?
Yeah, sure.
I mean, he seems like a pretty straightforward fella. He didn't tell you what he wants.
How is that straightforward?
I mean, to be fair, I guess I wasn't in the best state to be really listening to what he had to say.
I don't know. It seems like he's just toying with you. I guess if you amass that much power, you don't really have much better things to do in your free time.
Yet you still crave power, Torch. Is this the kind of creature you want to become? He kind of just gestures off to where the fiend kind of apparated away from.
And he says, I don't know really too much about him. Seems like what he's doing with his power hurts people. Who knows? Maybe he's helping. I don't really know anything about him. But being that powerful, I wouldn't mind it.
Igrim just like doesn't like your reaction or your response at all. At all. And he's at his wit's end with you, Ignatius. Like, not only does he agrees with you most of the time, but sometimes you just get on this like funny bone bad, just get on real on his nerves sometimes. And he's just gonna essentially pout and just walk off, stamp off. Find some kind of like dilapidated, ruined, building or something, and just like pound his fist into the wall and like, loosen the bricks, essentially. Maybe he even like takes the whole like building down with his bare fist, punch after punch. And then he, after this, as he knocks down a wall, dust kind of billows in the air, and he just kind of slump, kind of sitting on the dusty ground. Just heads in his hands. His head is in his hands, and just like, perhaps he's weeping, perhaps he's just resting his mind, but he's just really closing himself off.
Ignatius's response to him basically saying, yeah, I wouldn't mind having that kind of power, kind of equates to Tallow to, yeah, I wouldn't mind doing the things that this piece of work has done. And it just really reaffirms his apprehension, I suppose, for Ignatius. It's not necessarily that he doesn't trust him, but he just sort of really recognizes how dangerous this guy is and can potentially be. And so in this case, though, Tallow will sort of come up close to walk over to Kira and just sort of say quietly to her, we have to really keep an eye on Ignatius. I'm worried that, especially with these new secrets and this new knowledge that we've got from the doctor and everything else that we're still hopefully yet to learn, I don't like the direction he's going to be going if we're going to be unlocking some powerful secrets. I think we have to make a pact to keep an eye on him. What do you think?
Yes, I agree. I will do whatever is necessary to get us unlocking these secrets safely.
I have an idea or two about how we can try and put in some kind of safeguard to maybe not let Ignatius take all of whatever power we might discover for himself. I think we have to be very careful about if we individually discover something, who in our group we share that with.
Of course, I share all of the knowledge that I have, and I would hope you do as well.
Absolutely. But, and he leans in even closer and speaks even more quietly. But do you think we can, that's a good idea, sharing everything with Hothead over here?
Of course not. You've seen the way he behaves. He's like a child.
He's one tantrum away from, I don't know, killing us all maybe.
We will have to keep a close eye on both of them. But I am more afraid of Ingram than I am of Ignatius. I've seen him be stabbed repeatedly and not go down. I do not know if I can trust either of them. And what is this deal? Who is this person?
Yeah, I don't know either. But it's tricky with Ignatius, with Igram for me. I've promised to help him figure that out. But I'm not so naive that I don't recognize the danger of being of what he's caught up in. I mean, look at that guy we just saw there. That's what we're dealing with. So that's what we're dealing with now, and that's what I'm worried Ignatius could become as well. So I think maybe we should make a pact now, Kira. Any knowledge and secrets that you and I discover, we share only with each other, and discuss whether it's worth sharing with the other two.
I agree, Tallow. And Kira will do some sort of like hand gesture, kind of like spitting in the palm kind of thing. But maybe it's like scooping up some dirt or something. And I think it's a gesture that maybe you particularly would recognize as if, like...
Yeah, definitely. I think as Kira sort of bends down to scoop up a little bit of dirt, Tallow does at the same time as well, and sort of has a little, and yeah, I think perhaps there's a particular saying that goes with it, that they both say at the same time as they shake on it.
So
exactly.
This whole time, Ignatius is just kind of like sifting through the ash, so like he's curious to see if there's anything left. And he glances over his shoulder and sees those two talking so intently. And then his eyes turn black as he attempts to send a message to them. And he feels like he can't get through to Tallow. But the message goes to Kira as he says, "What are you two talking about?" And she hears it only in her mind.
Kira will kind of like look over right at him and just say, "You're a hothead! Now come on! Let's all or something worse than that creature comes out."
I mean, this isn't really a time for insults, but fine, I guess we should keep going.
I don't like you up in my head.
And so he sends a message to you again in your mind, says, "I guess you'll just have to deal with it. It's not like you can stop me."
Well, quit looking at my ass, too.
God. And so Ignatius would kind of chuckle at that. And then turn over to kind of see if you could see Igram and what he's doing.
Yeah, Igram is standing up and now kind of calmed a little bit. Kind of got his arm up over his head, exposing his side. And he's got this needle again. He's just tying together the gash in his belly. Here he's sewing it back together essentially. And stopping the bile from leaking out. Goes to the side, goes to the other knife wounds that are, maybe up and near his shoulder or in his back. Tries to reach around and get them. He's not wincing as the needle point pierces his flesh and coils around. Just does it as if someone was darning a sock or something.
And so Ignatius would actually come over and offer to cauterize the wounds as he kind of like holds his hand up.
Go away. No, just step back. Get on my face.
So he doesn't reply. He just takes that step back and lets you have it.
Yeah, I think as you approach him, though, with this kind of, he's maybe pulling his shirt up a little bit, you see that, like, when normally people would bleed, his doesn't really bleed that much. It's more like of a very viscous, blackish bile that kind of leaks out, more than, blood. And kind of just, like, he smears it off. He's wiped it on the stone wall or on the ground a few times. There's, like, this, black smears going on around him as he just kind of, like, in his hands are kind of covered in this black stuff.
Would I notice if anyone's weapons are like worn out or like really like bad or poor quality?
You notice that my sword is only half of a sword with a hilt.
That's right. That's right. So I realize, remembering that the swords are in there, I would turn back to Igram and then decide that it's best that I'm not the one to tell him. As I would walk over to Tallow and be like, "Hey, the swords of those bandits are still in those ash piles. So if you want to grab one and give it to your friend Igram, since his was destroyed, you probably could use it."
Thank you, Tello says, kind of as if he's surprised at Ignatius's kindness. And yeah, Tello goes over and picks up a couple of the short swords, and if the scabbards are there as well, sort of puts them in there. So he walks over towards Igram, strapping one onto his own waist. And just comes over and rests the other one up against the rubble stone wall near Igram. Claps him on the shoulder and just walks back away, trying to just give him some space, but a bit of a gesture.
Yeah, and as you approach, you drop the sword off, and he goes. He has both of his hands busy. He kind of like looks around. He's got this needle in his hand. He kind of just puts it in his flesh, like as a pincushion, freeing up his hand and grabbing down to the scabbard and just fastening it around his waist where the old scabbard was, and kind of just discarding the old scabbard. He gives you a nod, Tallow, as you walk away, and you hear something as you walk away. He'd say, "Thank you." It's a little quieter than he normally talks, but you swore you heard it come from his mouth. And as he's done fastening the sword, he pulls the needle back out of his skin and continues knitting his wounds.
And I imagine from there's just this like awkward, tense silence before eventually, likely begrudgingly, the four of you would begin to move out again. Tense, strange silence between everybody. No one willing to be the one who breaks the quiet. You can see up at the top of the hill as the four of you walk further into the ruins. A figure dressed in fine clothes, piercing green eyes, and a wicked grin, a smile across his face as he watches the four of you walk. And that's where we'll go ahead and end this session.
Oh my god.
Nice. Dang it.
Oh my gosh.
Ooh, just one exasperated sigh of relief there. Whoa.
That was great.
Oh, man, I can't wait till you
Yeah,
guys
that
kill
was a
each
good
other.
session.
I like how I'm the bad guy when I'm trying to get these guys to surrender. It was like, oh, Ingram just killed the other two because he was mad or whatever. It's fine.
Both of you guys are crazy, man.
I don't know. I feel like Ingram's like simple enough when he's normal.
Hmm.
Like he's easy to understand when he's in his right state of mind. That's for sure.
That's true.
Which is like 30% of his existence.
Yeah. 30% of his time is like, I want my family back. And then 70% of the time is like, die! Whoever you are, you're going to be on the end of my sword.
I might just clarify for people watching this after the fact, maybe, about why Tallow's two spells, the cantrip Prestidigitation and the level 1 spell Earth Tremor, why they both failed. And Jeff can tell me if I say anything wrong here and fill in the gaps. But with the shadow mechanic, if you have 0 shadow, which Tallow was cleansed down to in the ritual at the end of the first session with the doctor, if you have 0 shadow, then there's a purity mechanic or purity rules that come into play, and that means you can't cast any spells, even cantrips, and a couple other things here, like you are resistant to fire damage but vulnerable to necrotic damage and things like that. I don't know how much you want to give away, Jeff.
Yeah, basically there's a mechanic similar to like Adventures in Middle-earth and Symbaroum and things like that we're using for this. And yeah, what Keel said is basically spot on. Magic is tied in part to shadow, where in order to cast your spells, you have to have a certain amount of shadow built up, because magical energy is built into your subconscious, which is what shadow basically enhances as it gets higher. So yeah, he is currently unable to cast spells. Getting shadow isn't that hard in this game. If Tallow really wants to, it wouldn't be that tough. But for now, it's interesting to see without his powers. It's really interesting to see that kind of push and pull of that coming into play.
Yeah, so I actually tied my telepathy into it. So like the mystics, like you can use telepathy on anyone, but I decided it'd be interesting if like to flavor it as like I'm speaking through shadow. So if you're at 0 purity, I can't communicate into your mind because there's no shadow for me to lace my messages into.
Yeah, I liked that.
Yeah, that was really cool. So for just that entire like last scene after the break, everybody take a point of inspiration, because like all 4 of you freaking did awesome. And I don't know if I ever mentioned it or not, but I don't keep just one inspiration, so these will stack.
Awesome. Thank you.
I use my inspiration points really liberally. I like to spend them, so I don't think I'll ever have a point in time where I'm at 2 points of inspiration.
I have a bunch, actually.
I guess, yeah, because all your things are saving throw based. You can't really, re-roll a bad die for that.
Yeah, I mean, Jeff would probably like allow that anyway, but I usually try and save them for like some kind of like environmental thing that I can like change or impose.
Yeah. So maybe at some point there'll be a session of this campaign where I don't put an unstoppable, unbeatable enemy in front of you guys. But for now, it's just too much fun to mess with you guys.
It's a
So
really good way to show off the scope of the setting. Like you guys are
Yeah,
weaklings, but I
just-
guess we are weaklings essentially. Even though one of us can't die, another one of us can channel amazing fire magic. The other one is, very insightful and Sherlock Holmesian and really accurate with her bow, and the other one, likes to comfort a squirrel.
He's the light in the dark, the kind heart of the group.
The Marti
Yeah.
of the Planeteers, yeah.
yeah, the setting has a very wide range on it. You have just like the pathetic commoners of the world, which could be killed in a single hit by basically anybody with any weapon, all the way up to spoiler alerts, the demon that you guys just talked with, which are like they're not too far off from what most gods would be at in other settings. Like their sole purpose is just to cause shadow and make everybody miserable, people who were stupid enough to bargain with them, and just really, really bring on the pain.
You calling Igrim stupid?
I'm just saying.
If the shoe fits.
All right, well, I will go ahead and at least stop the recording here. I think I will go ahead and put this up pretty soon, just because I liked where that ended up. Despite me feeling a little bit weird going into it, I think it ended up being a lot of fun. Yeah, thanks anybody who watches this after the fact.